Guys, welcome back to the World Arm Wrestling Federation. Just getting super jacked here for a minute, getting ready to start my new profession, professional arm wrestler. Just kidding. Last time we were talking a little bit about one of my favorite new sports, and that is arm wrestling. And I really kind of started getting into it last year, and the more I got into it, the more I started watching it, the more infatuated with it I became. There's a lot of things that professional arm wrestlers are doing that every strength athlete should be paying attention to. And we're going to talk about two principles, at least, maybe three, that I think arm wrestlers are really paying attention to, and the rest of the strength community has forgotten a little bit about. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about, the last video I did, we were discussing the fact that all the movement patterns that you have in your body are already there. You are as strong as you'll ever be. What is happening to the body as we begin to do strength training is it's not really a process of gaining strength. It's a process of becoming uninhibited. Your body has inhibited a certain amount of muscle contraction because it knows intuitively it can't give you all of your strength capacity because something in the body is not ready to receive it. It inherently knows, specifically, the connective tissue and the muscle, the tendon, the ligament. Over time, if it gives you all your strength capacity, you're going to get hurt with it. The body intuitively knows this. So through practice of strength training, we gain neuromuscular control. We learn new movement patterns, and hopefully those patterns are correct, which leads us back to adaptation. Adaptation principles, I think, by and large, are just completely forgotten in the strength community these days. Once again, we're looking mostly at neuromuscular benefit or adaptation. How do I get my nervous system and my muscles to respond so that I can create more power, more strength, more speed? At the end of the day, this is what the strength community is looking for, and this is a great thing. But we are forgetting some other things along the way, and because of that, it's leading to injury. If we look at the adaptive qualities of the body, think about the body as just a lump of clay or water. I pour water into a beer mug, it takes on the shape of beer mug. I pour water into a pail, it's the shape of pail. Water will take on the shape of anything you put it into. It's basically formless. The body is very much the same way, and go figure. Shit, we're 90% water, right? When you start thinking about the body is constantly adapting, constantly to whatever it is that we give it, you will start to understand how to train on a different level, meaning everything you do is an exercise. And I mean sitting with posture. Why for hundreds of years was posture such an important component to society and considered rude to slouch? If you watch, you know you're watching a timepiece movie or show when you see people sitting on the edge of the chair, never coming to the back of the chair and relaxing. This would have been considered bad form or bad etiquette 100 years ago. Now watch people sit around. You know, they're in the lazy boy recliner all chilled out. Nobody's thinking like that. Very wise people understood that if you sit prolonged hours in flexion of the spine, there's an adaptive quality to that. And you will lose the capacity of your spine, and therefore you will not be able to work. Now, up until about World War II, I don't know the exact statistics, but I would argue probably maybe 80% of the country was still agrarian at World War II. We didn't really start producing and manufacturing in massive capacity until the 50s, 60s, and on. Now, obviously, there was always steel mill, coal, and whatnot. But even those people, even when I was a kid, I could remember most everybody had a garden. Most everybody had a small piece of land that they were working. So up until about World War II, everybody was still working. You were working in the factory or you were working on a farm, but you were moving your body and you were working. The importance of posture, how you were moving, not the what, how you were moving was absolutely essential, because if you lose your capacity to work, you starve. Adaptive qualities, guys. The body is always adapting to what you are giving it. Now, we must, if that is the case, we must take into account every little thing we do. Again, posture, technique, form must be first in all exercises, because you are adapting from that. Not just from a neuromuscular standpoint, but the connective tissue, the sinew, the tendon, the ligament. Oh my God, the collagen fibers of the vertebrae. Talk about adaptation. How many times in the strength community have we ever talked about the adaptive qualities of the vertebrae? We always talk about having a strong back from a muscular perspective, but we never talk about adaptation of the disc itself. What we know is the disc is collagen fiber. If I take somebody like a belly dancer who's got all this crazy mobility in their hips and spine, what you would see is the collagen fibers have adapted very loose. They're flexible. The spine itself is like a slinky. It's wiggly and wobbly, okay? That adaptation is not the best to deadlift with. If you have adapted that quality and then start to do a strength training program, you had best pay attention and go very, very slowly. If you're coming from the yoga community, and that's what you've done for 10, 15 years, and you start to do strength programming, you are really in jeopardy of serious, serious injury, because we know this is what's causing herniation. People have adapted the qualities of their disc from sitting, flexion at the spine, bad form, core is just completely turned off, disengaged, and they're just hanging on the ligament of their spine. They bend over to do something, to pick something up, or they cough violently and they've got a herniation in the disc. Adaptive qualities, guys. The body is a sponge. It's just sitting back, looking for the next thing to adapt to. So you need to think about how you were adapting. Now, one of the things that has me so infatuated with arm wrestling is they know this to be true. They know this adaptation, considering the sport specificity, the specific nature of their sport and the adaptive qualities of it. What are they looking to build? How are they looking to build a program that is going to make them a better arm wrestler? Now, what makes that so fascinating is this is really not a sport of muscle and nervous system. This is a sport of bone and sinew. Therefore, the guys that are doing the best, that are the world champions, have probably been doing it 10 plus years, maybe 20 years. I know a guy I watch a lot, Devin Laratte. He's pure entertainment. He's the Rowdy Roddy Piper of arm wrestling. Really awesome. Watch some of his YouTube videos. I'll try to put a link to a couple of them on the bottom. Watch some videos where they're talking about how he's training and why he's doing it. And specifically, he's adapting strength. All he is doing is strength training specific to that sport. He puts himself in odd positions, isometric contractions, internal, external rotation, supination, this really coming from rotator cuff, shoulder stability, elbow stability, small connective tissue in the elbow and bicep tendon, and developing this over time and being very, very smart about rest breaks. He may do a set of 3 of just holding a heavy freaking pipe, and then he'll sit down for 5 minutes. And he even says he has no consideration towards health whatsoever. Fitness is 10 dimensions. 5 of them have to do with general health, cardiovascular endurance, muscle endurance, strength, flexibility, body composition, things like that. That's general fitness. Those are all health related. And then you have a more performance aspect. There's 5 performance aspects to fitness. He doesn't give a shit about anything other than getting strong, but it's how he is getting strong, how he is building his connective tissue, long-term strength, making thicker, stronger bones, how they are training. And they're not doing any kind of extracurricular programming that has nothing to do with how the adaptation would be affected given arm wrestling. Let me kind of sum that up a little bit, because I know it's confusing and my brain's always going 100 miles an hour. It makes no sense for this guy to deadlift, to bench press, to run 40s, to jump up and down, to do anything other than adapt the connective tissue, the bone, the sinew, to develop strength on a farmer strong kind of mentality. His work is different, his performance is different, the sport is different. Now, with that being said, that is the only sport that I'm aware of where guys are specifically training connective tissue, tendon, ligament, and bone to make themselves stronger in a totally different way than we think of it. We're always thinking of strength as an outward exhibition of an internal process where I am picking up something and moving it, and I can measure it objectively. You can't measure an arm wrestling competition objectively. It's all over the place. It's crazy isometric positions in the most uncomfortable space and environment that you could possibly put your shoulder and elbow in. You can't measure that. I mean, it would just be impossible because the joint angles are never the same. Never the same. No 2 arm wrestling matches will ever be the same. So there's no way to objectively measure it. So training objectively in arm wrestling doesn't make a lot of sense outside of just knowing some specific strength that I'm working with. Maybe I take a couple of exercises and I know that, hey, that's a 50-pound steel pipe I'm doing an arm curl with, that's a 60, that's a 70, that kind of thing. Sure, knock yourself out. But at the end of the day, there's no spillover effect from knowing how much a pipe might weigh that you're training with it and the direct correlation into arm wrestling. At the end of the day, it's time under tension. It's an adaptive quality that you're not going to get for years and years and years. The best arm wrestlers are the guys that have been around the longest. I would also argue if we look at endurance athletes, 100-mile runs, Ironman triathletes, guys that are doing really super long events, you're going to find they're probably 40 years old or older. And it's because of the adaptive qualities of the connective tissue and all the other things that are holding you together that aren't neuromuscular. So this whole, I got a little cheat sheet here just to make sure I'm on the right page. This video is really about trying to just continue this process of thinking outside the box. We don't need more people out there correcting the deadlift, how to deadlift, how to squat, how to bench. I think we're having the wrong conversation because I keep seeing people continue to get injured even though they understand the how and the to and the why. Are they connecting the dots consciously? Are they truly approaching the technique in every repetition as brand new, like the Japanese tea ceremony, where everything I do is meticulous and I'm interconnected? This mind-muscle connection is primary, right? But it's not just technique. I need that as a base, or I never start to understand how to change the movement patterns of my own body. I must understand what it feels like, what right feels like. If a coach is just standing there the whole time saying, no, 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 you'll never learn that movement on your own. This is motor learning. What I'm talking about is a totally different experience than motor pattern development. Motor learning is a process where you are intrinsically involved in finding what is right and wrong for you. This has to be a prerequisite to everything we're doing. Mind muscle training first. Not how many calories you're burning, how much weight you're lifting. Fuck objectifying everything all the time. Some things can't be objectified. You cannot measure how much intention I'm putting into the barbell when I'm deadlifting. How much focus I'm firing every single muscle in my body. You can't measure that. There's not an EEG that you couldn't put enough electrodes up my butt and figure out how much intention and concentration is going into that lift. The other way I can objectify it is to look how much weight's on the bar. But that doesn't tell us everything. It gives us a small piece. Yeah, we got to measure it. But we can't qualify what the experience is of the lifter. At the same time, we must also understand the neuromuscular system will develop very quickly. Very quickly. Hypertrophy training is a perfect example. I can bring somebody in 6 weeks. If I feed them right, if I train them right, I give them the exact prescription that they need, I can put 3, 4, 5 pounds of hypertrophy. I can increase the size of those muscles with the right type of training. But in that same amount of time, there is zero change in the connective tissue. This is where tendinitis in the elbows and the shoulders and the knees, you're just getting beat up because you're doing too much volume for the connective tissue to catch up. That takes time. The collagen fibers of the discs, I don't care how much you squat in how short a period of time, I want to know how much you can squat in 10 years, 10 years of practice, 15 and 20. I'm 50 years old, and one of the things that's held me together the most is this slow, adaptive mind-muscle connection where I'm always in analysis of how I am lifting. And what I never understood until I started paying attention to arm wrestling was the need for this adaptive quality to happen to the connective tissue and all things non-muscular. This takes time. This takes patience. This takes perfect practice. Stop exercising. Start training.